wanted to do a stream real quick on the midterm elections coming up. And I'll be sharing my screen with you here in a minute to go over a few things. Basically, what I feel like is going to happen. Just a little bit of background, though, first. I did some of these for the, it was on a different channel, but I did some of these for the last presidential election, and actually got quite a few very rude comments from uh, mostly from Trump supporters, honestly, for that one. One of the things you had to consider about the last election, too, especially once we decided who the candidates were, I didn't really care who won. It didn't bother me. Um, I really didn't feel like either were good candidates, and so I really had no vested interest on who won. I was giving my honest opinion on basically based on what I saw in the polling, and the fact that I had so many angry and hateful responses is somewhat disheartening, especially when you consider. Like I said, I didn't care. When Trump won, I was like, you know. Would felt the same way if Hillary had won. But we're going to go through some of the elections for this cycle. Um, Based on what happened last time, I've actually taken a look at whether or not I agree with the polling, because last time the polling failed really badly. But excuse me. This time, I feel like the polling is a bit better. Almost felt like it had to be better for this next election. It really had to be better because a lot of these polling companies are going to put themselves out of business being that wrong, that off. Um, I had felt like the polling was bad in the 2014 midterms as well, but not that bad. Most of the time, most of the results were within the margin of error of those polls. So it really, this last election made them look bad. I felt like they were going to have to get better. Um, and I do feel like they have, but there is one specific one where I feel like they're still. I don't know what's wrong with the polling there, but I feel like they have the wrong result. We'll put it that way. So let me see if I can share my screen. It's been a while since I tried this, so bear with me. Screen share. Okay. All right. So taking a look here, we're going to start out with the Senate elections. So this is basically, so this is 270towin.com. I use it a lot to be able to fill in states and things like that. This is basically what we're looking at. I've seen quite a few that actually list this particular state, Tennessee, as a toss-up, or even a few that list it as leans Democratic, which is possible based on the polling, but we'll get to that one later. I'm basically going to leave it like this, though, because this is fairly low controversy. This is what most people think right now. When you look at the race, really the Republicans only need, from here, would need 2 seats, just two, to be able to maintain control of the Senate. And I do feel that they'll be able to do that, and we'll go over why, really race by race. So let's start out with the first race. First race is Florida. When you look at Florida, a lot of people don't think that Scott can win here. A lot of people don't think he can. They think Bill Nelson is too popular, which I agree that he is popular there, but they don't think that Rick Scott can win. I don't think the polling really shows that. In fact, what I see from the polling here is, honestly, I see two outliers and every other poll suggesting that he would win. I suppose it's 2-4. Uh, One of the ones that gives me a considerable amount of hesitation is the poll from Gravis right here. This one, I look at the sample size. That is a large sample size. A large sample size of likely voters. I honestly, every election is really hard to tell who are going to be the likely voters. And when I look at that sample size, I see a poll that maybe somebody was purposely, maybe not, but a lot of times when I see something like that, purposely trying to throw the poll off in one direction or the other. So that one I put a lot less faith in. The one down there for NBC, I would put a lot more faith in, but it's also an older poll too. So really, when I look at the data here, it suggests to me that the Republicans are going to pick up Florida. So we'll go ahead and fill that one in. And let's get rid of some of these here. Okay. So next one was Tennessee. Tennessee shows the Democrat winning in Tennessee. Most places I look at still show this one as a toss-up. And if they don't show it as a toss-up, they show it leaning Republican. There are very few that actually show it as leaning Democratic, which the polling would suggest. This is where I feel like the polling is bad. For this particular race, I do feel like it's bad. One of the things I would point to in it is if you look at the results from the primaries in Tennessee, what you'll see right away, a lot more people voted in the Republican primary and voted in the Democratic primary. And they were heavily, heavily voting for the candidate that won, which I believe was wasn't Bredston. That's the other Blackburn. They had heavily voted for her, went heavily for her. You can't always tell a lot from the primaries. That's why I don't typically look at something like that and say, that it says something about the general election. The only time I can look at those and say it definitely says something about the general election is if it's something overwhelming, and there has to be very specific circumstances too. For this particular race, there is no incumbent. There's no incumbent running, and so you can at least sometimes look at the turnout from the primaries to kind of gauge what the excitement is, or how dedicated the base is to voting for any particular party. In that particular election, I believe something like over 60% of all the votes cast were cast for a Republican, and well over 50%. I believe it was something like 55 or 56%, if I'm not mistaken, that had casted their vote for Blackburn. That's pretty significant. That shows a heavy amount of favoritism, really, in terms of who's going to get out to vote in Tennessee. And that's one of the reasons that I think Tennessee really will be Republican. I think it will go Republican. And as you can already see, we've already reached our 50 threshold for the Republicans to retain control of the Senate. We'll go through the rest of the races, but this is why I feel like the Republicans aren't likely to lose the Senate. Let's get rid of this one. Oh, God damn it. Stop it. All right, well, we're going to close this one, so there we go. Sorry about my language there. Yeah, so that was West Virginia. The polling all shows Joe Manchin ahead. A lot of people list this as a toss-up. I think mostly because President Trump is really popular in West Virginia, very popular in West Virginia. One of the few states where he is really popular, where he is above water with his approval rating. And I don't think it's going to matter in this race. Joe Morrissey didn't like President Trump to begin with, has been a very big, if you will, anti-Trumper, and so I don't see Trump's popularity really helping him there. Plus, from what I could tell from stories that I'm reading, um, and so we're about to have what will likely be a vote on Trump's Supreme Court nominee, and it looks like Joe Manchin is going to vote for Trump's nominee. And I think that alone will keep him his seat. So let's go ahead and fill this one in blue. Now we've got that one filled in. Continuing on, the next one I believe was Indiana. I hope we don't get another noisy ad there. This one, I can't find a lot of polling on it. I really can't. I feel like regardless, it's going to be close. But I can't really find a lot of polling to back up my data on. This one only gives one. If I go to other sites, I'll get like one, maybe two. There's just not a lot to base that opinion on. Um, if I had to guess, which is really what I'm going to be doing with this one, basically I would guess that it's going to stay Democratic because I feel like overall this is going to be a fairly good year for incumbents, especially senatorial incumbents. The economy is doing very well. That doesn't typically lead to a massive swing in states. It may lead to a few, there may be a couple, but yeah, that one I'm going to leave as Democratic. And we'll go on to Missouri, I believe was the next one. Missouri. This one, when you look at what they've got here, got just really, really tight, a very tight race. The one with the most that I see, the largest um, difference is this one here from whoever the Missouri Scout is. I don't know who they are. And it had McCaskill leading by 4. I also took a look at, and I had watched the primary returns for this particular election. My honest feeling on this election is that it will go to McCaskill. What you see a lot of times with a particular race is if the incumbent is running, well, most people figure the incumbent's going to win their race, McCaskill being the incumbent here. They don't really come out to vote. She got a lot of votes. Now, she did have a challenger, as I recall, which could have driven people out to make sure that she didn't lose to her challenger, but her challenger didn't get very many votes. So to me, it shows a lot of excitement for McCaskill in that race, and I do feel like she will carry that. I believe she'll still be the senator from Missouri. Continuing. That was Missouri. I think the next one, not sure, is this Nevada? No, it's North Dakota. Sorry. Okay, North Dakota. All right, yeah. So in North Dakota, a lot of people feel like that one may be leaning Republican. I really feel like this one, in a lot of ways, just like Indiana, is a pure toss-up. I would not be surprised in Indiana or North Dakota to see the opposite result of what I'm predicting. But for North Dakota, I am going to give that one to the Republicans. The most latest polling on it seems to show a bit of a lead for Kevin Cramer. The other thing to note with that is um, with who they're running there, he's actually a really, really good candidate to run in a general election. I could go into why, but I want to keep this somewhat shorter. Don't want to go on all day. Um, Continuing on from there, there are a lot of people that have Montana listed as a toss-up. I don't necessarily believe that it is. I do agree with what I saw here, that it is leaning Democratic. The last two states, both both of them, a lot of people feel like they're leaning Democratic with Arizona and with Nevada. It doesn't look like I have the Nevada one up. The polls are actually very close in Nevada. It's also another true toss-up. I'm going to give it to the Democrats because I do feel like this is a good election cycle for them, and I feel like they will win there. Where I don't necessarily agree is in Arizona. And I believe I do have that poll up. Let's see. Oh, joy, that was Nevada. Okay. Well, what I've seen with the Arizona polling is actually that a lot of people have that listed as leans Democratic, or some of them are actually going even further. I've seen some people saying that's likely Democratic. Um, Not likely. Not likely. Honestly, what you see with that, they haven't had their primary yet. They haven't chosen a Republican candidate yet. They have chosen a Democratic candidate. It really isn't surprising, at least to me, with what I know of elections, that um, having one side having chosen a candidate and the other side not having chosen a candidate, that the one that's chosen a candidate looks like it's in the lead. And a lot of times, as soon as next primary is over, so as soon as that Republican primary is over, that's when you'll start to get the real results of how that race actually looks. I would be very surprised, very shocked, if Arizona went for the Democrats. I think it will remain Republican. And so what you see there is essentially not much of a difference from now. Right now, there's 51-49. Um, actually some There are actually seats changing hands from both parties, and that's not really all that uncommon. Um, that's how I expect it to end up. It may end up slightly different. I could be wrong about Arizona. Um, One of the things that is kind of a question mark in Arizona, at least in my opinion, is just how much are Latinos going to be out to vote in Arizona? So Arizona has a large Hispanic population, and how will they vote? During the last presidential election, Latinos actually voted more for Trump than they had for Mitt Romney. Now they predominantly voted for Hillary Clinton, but um, I want to say that Trump got somewhere around 23% of the Hispanic vote nationally. Um, if that's more, like he would get something like 15, that can make a difference. If it's way lower than that, that can make a significant difference in Arizona. So, I could see at that point Arizona, going to the Democrats, but I really haven't seen anything so far that suggests that that's going to happen. Um, and if Arizona did go to the Democrats, well, I still feel like it's entirely possible that from here that Indiana could go to the Republicans. So there are different scenarios to get them to 52, but I do feel like it'll be something like 52 to 48, somewhere in there. Um, okay, going on to the House. This is kind of a mess. It's actually really hard to predict. I do have predictions for it, but most of my prediction comes from the generic congressional ballot, um, which right now, look at the generic congressional ballot, shows the Democrats with a 3.9 percentage point lead over the Republicans. That's not a giant lead, not a giant lead, but um, I do feel like it is significant. It is a significant lead, and um, when we've honestly, when we've watched some of these special elections, I feel like the 3.9% may be somewhat low, but let's just assume that it's good, it's accurate. When you look at that, and let's close the Senate because we don't need to look at that anymore. What you've got right now is got 10, 29, and 17. So it's got 29 that it considers to be actual toss ups, 17 it says lean Republican, and 10 that it says lean Democratic. And right now, the breakdown of power is 193 to 236. The Democrats really need to pick up 23 seats from what they have right now. Okay, hi, kitty cat. Hi, kitty cat. My cat has joined us for this and is meowing. I'm going to hold her right here. Okay. Anyways, so you've got 29 that they consider to be true toss-ups. And really where I want to start from is what everyone has right now. So we've got the Democrats have 193. From there, I'm just going to consider, because honestly, with a congressional district, it's really hard to say that it leans one way or another if it's close. Because if the polling is off by just a few percentage points, you're wrong with which way it's leaning. And I just told you that I think that the polling may be off by a few percentage points. So I'm going to take 10, 29, and 17, which is, that's 39, 49, 56. 56 seats really that will determine this election. The Democrats, just to, and I wrote this down earlier on Notepad, they need 23, about 41% of those closed seats. We just showed them leading in the congressional ballot by 44, 40 to just over 40. That would be enough, and if they're correct, they would be likely to pick up about 25 seats. So, boiling down into this, and I don't want to get too much into depth about this, I do feel like that the Democrats at this point are likely to pick up enough to take control of the House. The things that can throw that off are just insane turnout by the Republicans in a particular state. But unfortunately, when you look across the map, the places there's most likely to be insane turnout, one of those places that I feel like is going to have insane turnout is Tennessee. There aren't any districts that are considered toss-ups in there. There aren't any that are even considered close. Missouri is another one. North Dakota, Montana. Now in Montana, it's more than probable that, despite the fact it just says that it leans Republican, that congressional district is going to go Republican, but that's just one seat. I mean, you look across all these other areas, and one of the places that may make a difference is in Arizona. But if the Democrats actually do win Arizona, which I told you I don't think they will, but if they do, that's a pretty good indication they may pick up those House seats there. So the only state really that I look at where I feel like there may be something significant that will alter what the experts are thinking is going to happen, I feel like that there may be a significantly higher turnout for Republicans in California, um, which I feel like will keep most of those seats that were Republican in that state in the hands of the Republicans. But even with that, I just don't see enough to uh, show to me that the Democrats aren't going to get somewhere around 25 seats. Um, and when I look at California, the reason that I believe that there will be higher turnout for the Republicans than they believe is because of that ballot initiative, which I feel like it's going to fail anyway, to change their constitution so they can eventually secede from the Union. Um, but it's going to drive Republicans out to the polls. You've got to believe that it will. And when it drives those Republicans out to the polls, what the Democrats are hoping for in this election is that Republicans don't come out to the polls, and that the people who mainly come out to the polls are all these people who feel angry at Donald Trump or who feel disenfranchised. Um, that could change the results there in California. But overall, I mean, I look at a place like New York. It's got two toss-ups I can see right here. These two toss-ups right there. Um, there's no good reason to believe that Republicans are going to drive out to the polls en masse in somewhere like New York. There's no good reason to believe that they're going to come out en masse in somewhere like Minnesota. There's no reason to believe they will in Iowa. There's no reason to believe that they will in North Carolina. Um, they may come out en masse in Texas. It is possible. I'm not sure it matters because the area here, this large congressional district right here, um, honestly, it has been trending more Democratic. I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, that it's one of the ones that voted for Hillary Clinton in the last election. And I think, and I do think that they'll probably carry that district. Overall, I could argue this down and micromanage it down into the smallest factors to try and convince, other people or even maybe myself that the Republicans will retain control of the House. I just don't see it as likely at this point. But one of the things I would caution with it is that with what's going on, with looking that I think they'll pick up about 25. A lot of people out there are saying, oh no, they'll pick up 30 or 40. I've even seen some people predicting they would pick up 60 seats. 60 seats, absolutely no. It's just not going to happen. There aren't even that many that are considered toss-ups. 50 something seats, not likely. They would have to pick up every single toss-up up there, plus some that appear to be leaning Republican. Actually, most of the ones that appear to be leaning Republican. 30 possible, but only if this number right here. Oh boy. Oh boy. Boy, I hate those. Only if that number for the congressional ballot is way off. We're not talking 2 or 3 percentage points off. We're talking more like about, it'd probably have to be 6 percentage points plus off for them to be more near like 30. If it's like 2 or 3 percentage points off, they may get like 27, and so basically the caution with this is if it actually is incorrect and the Republicans are much closer to the Democrats, which I don't believe it is, I've seen nothing to suggest that it is, then it could end up very close and the Democrats may not pick up enough seats. But right now, I feel like they will pick up enough seats to win the House of Representatives. So go ahead and I will put this back to the regular screen. Stop screen sharing. And that's pretty much what I figure is going to happen. And this is the cat that you heard meowing, who is now purring because I'm playing with her. You can let me know what you think. I would appreciate this time some respectful comments and, honest debate on it. Um, I did not particularly appreciate, like I said, what I got from Trump fans in the last election because, like I said, I was just going based on the polling. It's really all I have to go on. I mean, I don't live in these states. I don't know what they're thinking. Um, but I do feel like the polling is better this time. One of the reasons I feel like the polling is a good bit better this time is it has pretty accurately reflected what's happened in the special elections. So I feel like they have a better handle on predicting this time than they did last. Um, but we will end up seeing here in just a few months. Um, Remember, keep those comments respectful. I really did not appreciate some of the racist comments I got about me last time. Um, things like uh, basically saying that I loved. I'm not even going into it. But I got some racist and sometimes homophobic comments. Don't do that. To be honest, at this point, with how politics are going, I could really care less who wins these next elections. I don't care. I feel like they're both parties, they're both corrupt, and I'm not really pleased with the direction of this country, save for the economy. I like the way the economy is going, and that's about it. Um, so share with me your opinions and your thoughts. Yeah.